Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourselves?
Sure. Hey, I'm Brenna from the bands Crystal Spiders and Lightning Born.
And I'm Trad from Crystal Spiders and Doomsday Prophet.
And the band that we'll be speaking about today is Crystal Spiders. How would you describe the music you guys make in Crystal Spiders?
I would say primarily it's in the heavy rock genre with some stoner rock, stoner metal, and doom metal influences.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like heavy blues, just heavy tunes with, faster parts, slower parts. We try and shove it all in there.
Slow and heavy music, basically.
Well, not all the time it's slow. There's some fast songs as well.
Slow, sometimes fast, heavy music. Is that
sometimes
better?
it's slow and sometimes it's fast, but always it's heavy.
And I should mention, you don't have a full-time guitar player. What people hear is actually you playing bass through an overdrive pedal. Is that right?
Actually, no. So on the album, Mike Dean from Corrosion of Conformity is playing guitar on the album.
On the album, but he's not a full-time member, is he?
Correct. No, he's not. He is my full-time bandmate in Lightning Born and one of my really good friends. And he produced the record. And when we were discussing who we wanted to put some guitar on it, he volunteered. But when we play live, that is correct. Sometimes we have a guitar player and sometimes I run through 2 amps.
Okay. As far as the sound, are you doing anything else to your bass to thicken up the sound?
So I've tried a couple of things throughout the time that we've been playing. Most recently, I have a Kramer Vanguard bass with an aluminum neck, and I just run that through my acoustic 450 solid state amplifier for the bass tone. And honestly, it's pretty disgustingly dirty just by itself without any additional pedals on it, which I can't complain. I've been playing with some different kind of guitar modification tones on what I'd like to run for the kind of secondary, more guitar-ish tones. And I don't currently have a favorite amp that I'm using for that. I've been tooling around with a few different ones.
Okay. Can you guys tell me a little bit about what led you to forming Crystal Spiders?
Sure. So I had been playing in my other bands, The Hell No and Lightning Born, and just doing vocals in those bands. And I had played guitar for several years. For a while, I was playing rhythm guitar in The Hell No, and then I decided that I didn't really like playing guitar all that much, and I would be interested in starting a project where I was full-time on bass. And being a friend of mine at the time, Mike DeLoach, had just been kind of talking about maybe starting a fuzz rock project, and we started jamming and decided to put out a Craigslist ad for a drummer, and that's where Trad came into the picture. So the three of us started jamming together, and we did the first album, Molt, and around that time was actually right when the pandemic started, and Mike kind of decided that he wanted to focus more on other projects, and Trad and I had more time to focus solely on doing Crystal Spiders. So we finished off Molt and immediately wrote Morieris, the second record, and that's where Mike kind of jumped in and decided to help put some of the guitar tracks on the record.
But before Mike jumped in, you guys had decided to continue the band as a two-piece. Is that correct?
Yeah, because we were bouncing ideas off each other was really easy. And then when you're writing as just as a rhythm section, I don't know, it was easier to arrange the record kind of without guitar parts in place, to be the fact like, hey, if we're going to play these live, we got to do it, solid, just the two of us. And so they already had a really solid foundation. So when Mike Dean was like, hey, I'll play on that thing, we're like, okay, cool. We have a lot of space for you to fill. But we ended up filling it with other stuff too, like, cello and synth and all this other stuff. So the fact that we made a really good rhythmic skeleton first really opened the doors for us to go in some other directions on this recent release.
And I would say that a lot of the songs that I write are more melodically inclined, because a lot of times they'll start with like my vocal melodies to go with the lyrics, but then sometimes I'll have ideas for other parts and just not be sure what they're going to be. Like they could be additional vocal parts, or they could be guitar parts, or they could be melody, like for what ended up being cello or violin on the record. So for a lot of this record and for some of Molt, the songs I ended up doing kind of at my house, where I just like put out different tracks on a demo and Ableton Live, and then we kind of like figure it out when we got into the practice space and started to arrange it, or got into the studio and started laying it down, like where all the pieces were going to fall into place.
Can you expand on that a little bit in terms of how you write and arrange songs? Are you guys writing in the practice room together, or are you coming up with riffs and then bringing them to rehearsal?
So usually, oh, go ahead, Trad.
Tag. I was gonna say, well, Brenna's constantly writing in terms of the lyrical content or the bass riffs and stuff. So there's never a lack of material to bring in. So she'll bring in a bunch of stuff, and once we're working and playing on it, some will stick immediately and be like, oh, that's great. Like, no, we're working on that right now. And others will be like, let's put that on the back burner. Like for example, in Medias Res was one that Brenna brought to the table for Molt. And just the way we were working on it, we weren't really happy with it, but then taking it back and workshopping it from scratch ended up being a much better product, and I think she was really going for originally from that riff and from that song. So yeah, Brenna usually writes the majority of the melodies and the kind of the big skeleton of the whole thing. Then she brings it in and we play it off. And I mostly work on either groove and feel and like kind of what the BPMs kind of should be. And then we kind of work it out between the two of us. And then it ends up, hey, this works. Or, hey, let's put this on the back burner for next time.
And percentage wise, what's that like? How often does it work, and how often is it put on the back burner?
Oh, I'd say like easily 90 to 95% of them, we click on it right away. And then maybe 5% we're like, I like that piece. Let's save that piece for later.
Well, I think too, the way that I write songs, like some of them are just bangers. Like on the record Pandora, they're like 2.5, 3.5 minutes, and they're just done pretty much by the time I bring them to practice. Like I've got all the riffs, I've got all the melodies, and like we just knock it out, decide on the tempos, and maybe like put some embellishments in. And then other ones like in Medias Res on the record, they're a lot more kind of sprawling. Like that's an 8 and some change minute song. So it's not really a surprise to me that I brought it to practice a couple of times and then was like, no, I'm too frustrated to like sit here and try to work this out in the practice space right now, because it really just takes kind of a combination of like alone time with writing and demoing, practice time with like playing with the feel and with the structure, and then studio time of layering and like maybe putting on additional touches. So that's probably, let's see, we had at least a couple of those on the first record, Molt, and then Medias Res on this one. And then I have at least 2 more in the back pocket that like I brought to practice a time or two, and we jammed on them and we were like, yeah, that's fire. And I was like, well, I'm not ready to finish it yet, because sometimes I take it home and I just like marinate it on it for a while before I feel ready to, I guess, invest the energy that it takes to write a song like that. And those are the ones that I personally usually don't like to play live because, first of all, a lot of people in a live setting are like, if you have a 30-minute set, I'm not gonna spend a third of it on one slower, more kind of orchestral and epic song. I'm like, people want to bang their heads right now. Like, let's put out some bangers. But that's how I would say the 5% of songs that Trad was saying often need to get like, they need a little bit more TLC before they're getting on the record.
And when do you know a song is finished? When are you guys happy with it?
Never.
Like never. It's an ongoing joke with me and Mike Dean because like every time we get toward the end of a record, we'll be like final mixes and he's like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "I hate it." And he's like, "You want to start over? We can just start over." And then I'm always like, "No, God damn it, just send it away before I change my mind." And then after like a month or two of forgetting how much I hate myself, I'll listen to it again and be like, "Oh, this is all right."
Sorry, Trad, did
Yeah, it's
you
never done.
want to add anything?
No, honestly, it's never done. I mean, once you lay it down and then you go back and listen, you can always nitpick to, forever. And what do they say? Like, you don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good or whatever. But I think any artist will say the same thing. It's like even a painter, like they put something out, they're like, that brush stroke could be better. Or, oh, this could be better. But I think it's in terms of having a consistent product that you want to keep pushing out. Sometimes you got to let the little things go, and that's okay.
Have you ever reworked a song after you recorded it?
Not for this project. I don't think we've ever played something right and then completely, and we're like, I hate it, and then we completely go back to the drawing board. Have we done that yet?
No, probably not anything that's been recorded, but I'm of the mind that I don't care if we change things whenever we decide to. So like, I think we had a couple songs that we were playing in the live set, and then I was like, every time we play that one part live, I just hate it. So let's just like skip that part or like change it entirely. And
or just put it on the back burner too. I mean, that's fine. Like,
yeah,
there's a couple tracks that's like because it's got to be fun for us to play it live too. We want to keep it fresh and interesting for the fans that are come out to see it. But I know a bunch of bands do that. They rework a couple of songs here and there and play it different live. Or
well, that's like the cool thing about music as an art form is that it's an ephemeral construct. It's not like a painting where you made it and then it sits in a gallery forever and you're never going to make that painting again. It's something that's slightly different every time you play it, and when you record it, you're really just snapshotting a moment in time. It's not capturing like the perfect and absolute pinnacle of what that song can be. It's just like one incarnation of it and one vision and version, and you can do it a million times. And that's why like I don't particularly feel like there's anything, I don't know, I would find it a pleasant surprise like if a band switches around, like whether or not it's going to have additional members when it tours or less members or a different approach to kind of tried and true songs. I mean, that's like bands like Big Business and other bands who have additional members sometimes and sometimes they don't. I mean, the Corrosion of Conformity is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, they change people up, as it suits.
I mean, it's like they've got the Animosity lineup and the Blind lineup, and right now they've got Pepper Keenan doing his thing. Will he be there forever? No one knows.
So let's talk about the new album. Would you mind saying the title for me?
It's Morieris.
Morieris. So let me try that again.
It's not an easy one to say. Sorry.
So Morieris is the name of the second Crystal Spiders album, and it'll be out October 1st through Ripple Music. We spoke a little bit about your writing process. Would you say this album came together pretty quickly?
I'd
would
say,
say
yeah.
so.
I mean, Brenna had all the stuff in the back burner from the stuff we were doing with Molt, and I think we wrote this like 3 months, and then hopped right in, something like that, 3 or 4 months. Like, it was fast. I thought it was fast.
Yeah, I mean, we finished like the final studio stuff for Molt literally like right as soon as the pandemic started, because we had to finish the last few tracks remotely. So I think it was like maybe April when we were finishing the touches on that, and then we had the entire album Moiraris written by June, and we went in the studio in August. So I mean, the whole thing probably like 2 months, because I had a couple of the songs already pretty much done by the time we were done recording Molt, and then the rest of them just came together really quickly. Because like I never stopped working during the pandemic, but I was really bored.
So, did you go into this album with any uh, any any specific sound in mind? Did you want to have this album stand apart from Molt in any way?
I would say a lot of the songs, when I write them, I kind of have like an atmospheric vision for some of them, which can occasionally be frustrating to chase in the studio. Like I usually want to set some kind of a soundscape or a mood, and they're a little bit different for every song. And I like remember, gosh, which of the songs was it, Trad, when you were like, these two sound too much alike? And I'm like, they sound too much alike right now, but they won't sound anything
And
alike
they won't
by
in
the
the
time
end.
they're done in the studio. It was Golden Paw, and what was the other one? I think it was Morieris, maybe. That you
I
said
think
they
it
sounded.
was. Yeah, it was those. Yeah, it was those
Yeah,
two.
it was Golden Paw and Morieris, and he was like, "These two sound too much alike," and I was like, "No, they won't. They won't at all, and they don't." So, that's
When you say they sounded too much alike, do you mean specifically the riffs? Like the
I
chord
think it's
structure was
when
pretty
you're
similar?
listening to a song or you're writing a song and all you have in your ear is bass and drums at the time, it's difficult to imagine the finished product. Like, because all you're hearing is literally two very similar wavelengths of sound. And so if you're playing something like, I don't know, that has a lot of toms and a lot of bass, there's not like much definition in your ear when you don't have those other frequencies once the guitars are added.
Yeah, so it's like if you're making like cupcakes, right? And the itself is, they're both chocolate. By putting a different icing on top with like the guitar and the vocal melodies that go eventually on top of that, like it's a totally different cupcake. You could.
Okay, so like red velvet cupcakes are actually chocolate cupcakes.
Yeah.
But you put red food coloring on them and you put cream cheese icing on them, and then they're red velvet cupcakes.
Right, and that's totally different than like the little volcano cupcakes with the white filling and the little swirly thing on top, whatever those are called.
Hostess cupcakes.
The hosted, those are so good. Yeah. So it's so when you have the songs like that, the cake could be the same, but it's all the little extra pieces that make that cupcake what it is.
Also, I think sometimes in the practice space, like it isn't always easy for Trad to hear my vocals very well, like over the drums and the bass. So like all he hears is literally.
We have a small room. I don't know if you can see all this.
Yeah, he's got my 8x10 bass cab right next to his drum kit. So if that's literally all he's hearing, of course it's gonna sound exactly the same to him.
True.
So I should.
Well, because they are like of similar tempos, and that's another drummery thing. If you feel like you're playing the same thing, it's gonna feel like the same song.
So I should point out that the songs as cupcakes metaphor didn't come up when I spoke to Wolves in the Throne Room. We
I love them. They're awesome.
They are awesome. Uh, so we spoke a little bit about Mike Dean's contributions. You guys had a relationship with Mike from being in a band with him, and he also produced the first album, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Does he have his own studio?
Yes. It's in the same building as our practice spaces, actually.
Super convenient.
Is there any reason you guys decided to record with Mike other than the fact that he's an OG and he was in Corrosion of Conformity?
He's like my best friend. And he's, yeah, I don't know. I don't really want to make records with anybody else. He gets me at this point. It's like,
Yeah.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But also, at this point, let's see. Full-length records, I've probably worked not with like a ton of different producers, but at least like 4 or 5. And I think when you find someone that you vibe with, especially if you're someone like me, like I'm not formally trained in music, I don't speak music theory. So I really have to have somebody who is just on my like wavelength to where if I can explain things, they know what I'm going for. So like Mike obviously is a natural choice in that sense because he and I have a lot, like we have the same music vocabulary. Like he knows what I'm looking for, and he'll be like, "We'll name a record that sounds like what you're going for with this song." And on this one song on the record, Offering, it was funny how frustrating it was to like explain what was in my head when we were doing the song. But I was like, yeah, okay, so the beginning intro is like a 1960s Italian horror movie. And he was like,
Yes, but what kind of cupcake would that be?
I don't know enough about Italian pastries. Italian wedding cake, maybe, like, but dyed black, obviously. And went pulled sound bites from an Italian horror movie from the 1960s, and I can't tell you which one because it's copyright violation, and ran them backwards, and those are the samples that you hear on the beginning of that song. Also me screaming.
But like, and piggybacking off what she said about the vocabulary with Mike is the so when we had done the part for Septics is, you know, Demon Cleaner's my favorite Caius song, and I love Caius. And, you know, I didn't want to copy that riff, but I wanted to do something close to it because it's such a great drive, and it's, you know, I want to pay homage to this song that I really like. And then when I was playing it, is the second I go back in, and he was like, "Dude, that sounds like Demon Cleaner." I was like, "Yes, you totally get what I was going for." So yeah, we just have this like implicit, we're all on the same page. He knows what we want tonally. He knows how to get the best out of us. If we don't lay down something perfect, he's not going to be like, "That sucks, do it again." He's going to be like, "Do you want to lay that down again?" Wink, wink.
Well,
nudge,
yeah,
nudge.
he's definitely got that like Virgo perfectionist streak as well. So he's not going to rest until something is right, which I think some people would be frustrated with in a producer and engineer because they just want to be, they'd want to have it over with. Or I've known him to literally like get partially through bands recordings and then just be like, "I think you should find another producer. I don't really like this." And clearly like you have a vision for it and your vision isn't my vision. So I think you should take it to somebody who gets what you're doing or agrees with what you're doing, because I would suggest you do other things. And that really can chap people's asses. But like him and I have an understanding where we can respectfully disagree with each other and compromise on different points, which I think is really important too when you get into a project like this one, where, I mean, all of those bass riffs were mine. Some of the guitar riffs were his, and some of them were mine. Some of them that he wanted to do, I didn't want him to do, and some that I wanted him to do, he didn't want to do. And that took a lot of communication and like literally just sitting in a little room working it out to be like, okay, I can't. First of all, I'm not the greatest guitar player, and I'll be the first person to admit that. So if I play guitar on certain demos, he'd be like, I really don't like that guitar part. And I'm like, well, that's because I did it shitty. So like now I have to explain to you what I was going for. And then if you can articulate it better, then you'll understand. And I think one day we were in there. Yeah, actually, it was the guitar intro for Septics, and he just like did not understand what I was going for. And I was like, he's like, that mathematically doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, I don't care. It works in my head. Just keep trying it. And he tried it for like, yeah, he tried it for like an hour, and then he finally like latched on to what I was saying. And he was like, oh, that sounds sick. So it's just kind of getting to that point and not having someone who will just shut you down because you aren't exactly speaking the same language at the same time, and sort of striving to get to that shared vision where both of you are happy with the product is something that takes a lot of teamwork, and I think is a special type of relationship that not everybody is going to get with a producer.
But we're lucky we have it.
As a producer, what would you say Mike brought to your sound?
I really like the kind of straight to tape vintage. Like the sound is what it is. I've worked with producers in the past that are a little more heavy on the digital compression kind of side. But you lose a little bit of the articulation when you're playing. You lose a little bit of the feel. But I think Mike really gets the concept of like the groove and the feel of the song is, that's the driver. It's like we're all slaves of the riff, so to speak. But the fact that he's willing to go with the old traditional tried and true methods and still incorporate the new stuff, I think is really valuable. I mean, some guys are all about digital, some guys are all about vintage, but it's just sort of like Mike's got the best of both worlds.
Brenna, did you want to add anything to that?
I think best of both worlds is definitely true. And it's interesting, especially when it comes to vocals, because I think there's kind of a medley of vocal, I guess, recording techniques on the album. There's some that were done directly to tape. There's some that were done in the studio. There's a couple tracks that I did on Ableton Live at my house, and then like they all kind of get in there to make a pretty unique pairing. I think one of the songs you can hear that on most clearly is Maelstrom, which was our second single. You can hear like when I'm using a lot more force, I was able to do that because we were doing direct to tape. And I think it might have been maybe when we were recording live to tape as well, because like I'm not blowing out the microphone. I can sing as loud and as powerfully as I want without having to like temper any of it. And then there's verses where it slows down and gets more quiet and kind of more like conspirational in tone. And then that was done on like a studio microphone in the box. And you can hear the fluctuation in the song, but it's more like it goes along with the mood and the atmospheric changes. And it's not like an awkward shift in recording and production techniques. And I think it takes a deft production hand to mix that and to get where you're going instead of having it sound hackish.
And as we discussed, Mike Dean also contributed guitar to the album. How do you describe Mike's contributions as a guitar player and what he brought to the album that way?
Well, I noticed that. Well, you can clearly hear a tonal shift between Molt and Morieris, right? Molt had, Mike DeLoach's contribution. So when you say what Mike contributed to the album, I think it's funny because they're both Mikes. But Mike
I
1.0, yeah, Mike DeLoach added a lot more kind of faster paced riffing. He's a huge Thin Lizzy fan. He plays in a lot of hardcore bands and stuff like that. So just the faster picking style and that kind of sets the tone a lot for kind of the immediacy of Molt. And then when Dean comes in with a much more, I would say, kind of slow hand to it, a lot more syncopation in his playing, a lot more like dotted eighth notes, dotted sixteenths and stuff like that, that really add the extra punches to the songs when they're necessary. Without totally being like, oh, I'm gonna noodle on top, like so. Tonally, to me, it's a dramatically different record than our first one in that it really builds on the soundscapes that Brenna really wanted to make. So it's really one giant cohesive piece instead of it's more holistic, I would say, than the first record, which is just very kind of piecemeal. Here's what we're capable of. Now here's where we're gonna delve into this tone with full force. And I think Mike's playing really just accentuated that atmosphere that she was trying to build. And correct me if I'm wrong, but
Brenna, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think he has an eye for where he needs to be sparse and where he needs to be more heavy-handed. And like I said, my approach with it was, if I felt pretty strongly about what I thought the guitar parts needed to be, like I would go in and show him those, or I would send him the Ableton versions that I'd come up with and, give him those as a starting point. And then other ones I was just like, hey man, you are the shit. So just take it and show me what you got. And then we'll talk about it from there. And most of the time, like, we've been working together for, gosh, I don't know, 6 years now. So most of the time he gets what I'm going for, and I don't really have to do a lot of heavy-handed explaining. So we can kind of work together pretty easily in that regard. And then on the parts where he was just confused or like not getting what I was going for, I'd go in there and just sit with him like all day. I would take my laptop to work remotely and we would just talk about it. Like, is this working? Is this not working? Or yes, I like that. Add another layer and a harmony here. And really just kind of built them that way, which obviously is a special sort of privilege that you get working with a producer in the studio that way, because it's not something that we had the leisure to do over shows and tours because pandemic. So I think that makes it a more special and unique record than we would have been able to make more traditionally.
And did Mike master and mix the album himself, or did you guys send it to someone else?
He mixed it, but it goes to Brad Boatwright at Audio Siege for mastering.
And why Brad? That's a name that comes up on this podcast a lot.
I think he's just the man. He gets it done quickly and efficiently, and he doesn't overcharge people. He's very fair. He's very reliable, and if you've got a good working relationship with someone, you stay loyal to them, I think.
Cool. So Morieris is the name of the second Crystal Spiders album, and it'll be out on October 1st through Ripple Music. Brenna and Trad, what's the best way to order the album? How can people get it?
So digitally, we have it available on the Crystal Spiders Bandcamp. So if you want to maximize the funds that Crystal Spiders can get, you can buy it directly through our Crystal Spiders Bandcamp. And for vinyl and CD formats, you can order either through the Ripple Music Bandcamp or directly through their web store. They have a European and a US web store. And it should be available in many of your local record stores that carry Ripple releases.
And is there going to be a limited edition vinyl version?
There is a multicolor splatter variant, a limited edition, I believe.
It's almost out, right?
Last I looked, out of 250 limited editions, there were only like 35 or so left. So definitely going
Only a couple
quickly
left.
if you want the special fancy.
Cool. And if people want to keep up to date with what Crystal Spiders is doing, what's the best way to follow you guys online?
We've got all the joints. We've got the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Twitters. I would say we're most active on Facebook and Instagram. We've also got Spotify, so please follow us on Spotify and add us to any cool playlist you've got going on there, because we're pretty new on Spotify and we could use the love. Oh, also follow us on Bandcamp, because every once in a while we will throw on some special freebies. I just put a Led Zeppelin cover tune of Communication Breakdown that I guested on, and might have a couple more of those cool things coming up to put on there. So if you follow us on Bandcamp, you'll get an alert.
Excellent. Is there anything else you guys want to say?
I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for wanting to talk
Thank
to
you,
us
guys.
and listen to us and shoot the shit with us and care about the music that we make, because that's pretty awesome.
And we're itching to come and play for you guys as much as y'all want us to. So it's like we just got to wait for everybody to get all straight, and then we can go do what we want to do.
Cool. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.